5 mind-boggling misconceptions. Before we start, I would like you to hit that red subscribe button so that you never miss out on any of our videos. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Here are 5 mind-boggling misconceptions. 5. The Anasazi disappeared without a trace. According to a widespread misconception, the Anasazi, or ancient Pueblo people, vanished without a trace. This erroneous belief is one of the most persistent that archaeologists encounter. The Four Corners region, consisting of the areas of what are now southern Utah, southwestern Colorado, northern Arizona, and northwestern New Mexico, which comprised the Middle Territory of the Anasazi's homeland, was depopulated between 1260 and 1300. The immigrants didn't simply disappear to thin air, though. Instead, they made new homes and began new lives with their friends, relatives, and other Pueblo groups to the east, along the Rio Chama and Rio Grande, to the south at the Pueblos of Zuni, Acoma, and Laguna, and to the west with the Hopi. 4. California is doomed to fall into the ocean. People have been waiting for some time now for California to split off from the continental United States and fall into the ocean. It is just a matter of time, they insist. All it will take is an earthquake powerful enough to cause the rift. Part of the reason for this misconception may be that the general public is not up to date on advancements that have occurred during short time periods in the relatively new science of geology, and are more likely, therefore, to believe the dramatic but spurious situations Hollywood filmmakers include in disaster and other types of movies. Why couldn't the Golden State become a sunken island? The nature of the San Andreas Fault prevents such a drop. The fault itself is a consequence of the Pacific Plate's northwest movement along the northern plate, which makes most of Southern California's faults move roughly parallel to one another in opposite directions with little vertical movement. As a result, although the faults have some vertical offset, it is not enough to overcome the horizontal effect of their movement. Therefore, Californians need not worry about being drowned at sea as their state sinks to the ocean's floor. Californians aren't completely out of the woods, though, because the land to the west of the right lateral fault will move progressively northward along the California coast, so that someday, in the distant future, Los Angeles will be adjacent to San Francisco. Even though California will continue to exist in a rather different configuration, the earthquake that causes such changes nevertheless will produce devastating effects. 3. The Earth causes the phases of the Moon. During the 1980s, seniors about to graduate from Harvard University were found to be laboring under the same misconception regarding the cause of the phases of the Moon as were 9th grade students in a nearby school. Both sets of students believe that the Moon's phases result from the Earth's shadow, a misconception that is shared by more than a few members of the general public as well. Fortunately, we don't need to rely on Harvard to explain why the Moon goes through phases. Dr. Barbara Cohen, a planetary scientist at NASA, explains that the Moon's phases result from the amounts of sunlight reflected off it as the rotating Moon revolves in its orbit around the Earth. A new Moon isn't visible to us because the sunlight illuminating it is on the side of the Moon facing away from the Earth. A full moon appears round because sunlight reflects from its entire disk. Between these two phases are those of the waxing moon and the waning moon. As the moon waxes due to its rotations as it revolves around the Earth, the moon reflects increasingly more sunlight, seeming to get bigger and bigger, until it becomes a gibbous half moon. Then the moon wanes as it reflects less and less sunlight until it becomes a full moon again. The least amounts of sunlight cause the moon to appear as a crescent. 2. A comet's tail trails behind it. In photographs and Hollywood movies, a comet's tail always follows it. This creates the misconception that the tail points in the direction from which the comet has traveled. In fact, a comet usually has 2 tails. Left over from the formation of the solar system, a comet is a ball of rock and ice. As it nears the sun, solar radiation vaporizes part of the comet, its nucleus. As a result, a glowing cloud of dust and gas is ejected, which forms a comma around the nucleus. As the heavenly body further approaches the sun, its tails develop and are expelled from the Nucleus by the solar wind. The first tail, a jet of ionized particles, always points directly at the sun, while the other tail, consisting of dust, which is not as strongly affected by the solar wind, curves back somewhat toward the comet's path. As the comet rounds the sun and begins streaking back toward the edges of the universe, the tail stretches directly away from the sun and is actually in front of the comet. 1. Forensic evidence is foolproof. Many people also assume that forensic evidence is foolproof. It isn't. This misconception is probably also the result of the way that movies and television present such evidence. In fact, as a Microbiology Society article points out, it is only very rarely that forensic science can identify evidential material with absolute certainty or can compare and match two samples to the exclusion of all other possibilities. Such evidence is seldom the pristine material that is shown on CSI programs. Instead, forensic evidence tends to be minute in quantity and frequently decomposed or damaged, facts which may greatly reduce its effectiveness in proving guilt or innocence. Trace evidence that police suspect have been transferred between a suspect and a victim also poses significant problems. Was it transferred directly from the suspect to the victim, or was it transferred indirectly, possibly among a number of intermediaries between the suspect and the victim? Likewise, maybe the suspect's DNA transferred to the victim's hand when they shook hands at a social event was later transferred to the victim's underwear by the victim herself during a trip she made to the restroom. Many other factors can negatively affect the usefulness of forensic evidence, both during the investigation and examination of the evidence and during its presentation to the jury. The authors of the Microbiology Society article offer an extended example of the latter difficulties involving the use of microbiology in the investigation of crime. First, a layperson may find it difficult to visualize such evidence, requiring the forensic scientist to explain to a jury of diverse educational backgrounds the fundamental nature of the microscopic evidence in a manner such that the explanation will be understood. Next, the expert might need to explain more abstract issues such as the transfer and persistence of the particular evidence type, as well as concepts such as frequency and probability. Anywhere along the process, the forensic scientist runs the risk of overwhelming the jury. The result could be acquittal or a mistrial due to a hung jury, which could, in some countries, incur the expense of another trial. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Also, watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video.